Hey, welcome to the War Bunker. Well, today was the day when we got the release of the new Space Marine Codex 2015. Now, I put a video on a week ago, pretty much summing up everything that my hopes and my fears for this new Codex. Having seen the recent Astro Militarum or Imperial Guard Codex that was released last year, which I think we discussed in the video last time, we were a bit disappointed with it. It was pretty much the same codex that was out there before, a few tweaks, but nothing major. And then, of course, having spoken to friends who are Tyranid players and will tell you in length about how they feel that their latest codex nerfed them. When a new codex comes out, it always is a fear that it's going to ruin a faction that you really love to play. And as I said, the last Space Marine Codex, I think, has really introduced a few things that were really cool in being able to basically personalise your army, align it to a particular chapter and kind of give it different rules. So now a Space Marine versus Space Marine battle would feel very, very different according to the kind of chapters each one was following. My fear after only 2 years was some of that going to be taken back and kind of change the way that we were playing the game? I really hope not, because I've really enjoyed it. But at the same time, there's a balance. Basically, you want some change. Because you don't want, after 2 years, to be basically paying out for a brand new codex that you'll have to use in tournaments to find out it's essentially the same codex but with a few changes and maybe a few points changes. But at the same time, you don't want too much to change because you really enjoy what you've got at the minute, because otherwise you wouldn't be playing them at all. Now, here's the thing. I've been going through the codex this morning and I have to agree that this is, on balance, it has a fair amount of changes, whilst at the same time not ruining most of the things that we've come to love about the previous Space Marine Codex. So my hat's off really to Games Workshop. You've pulled something off and I'm really quite impressed. And I mean, Cameron said, do you actually feel happy to pay for this? And I went, I think I actually am. And that's brilliant. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to take you through some of those details and a little bit of what's changed. I mean, fundamentally, the Codex is a Codex for the 7th edition. And this, as we talked about in the previous video, a lot of what's been introduced into 7, there are certain apocalypse type features. The most obvious of those are things like Imperial Knights are now a standard part of the game. Massive super walkers, massive super heavies. Things that used to be just restricted to Apocalypse are kind of creeping in. So now you can get the Orc Stomper like that in your Codex. It's just a unit. Likewise, if you're going to go Imperial Knight, you've got some super heavy walker or whatever. Now, first and foremost, the new Codex doesn't introduce any new models, which seems a bit odd, maybe, for some people. It's quite nice because it means I don't immediately have to rush out and get anything. However, it has started to introduce elements from Apocalypse, as in formations, which will change the way that you can play Space Marines and indeed the game, and allow you to start scaling up some of those Apocalypse type of features into your games. And that's what I'll talk about in a little bit, working through some of the changes that have happened. Obviously, this is probably going to be something that's going to be happening to pretty much every codex that's currently out, introducing these Apocalypse type formations that can be used. Pretty much a lot of the money that was out there was right on the money. The rumours were right on the money. Yes, you can now start to take, for one Predator slot, you can take a formation of up to 3 Predators. And it's likewise with a lot of heavy and elite choices. Now that in itself would be, that's kind of interesting. but not really worth, but not really worth paying out for a brand new Codex for. What is interesting is beyond that, if you take if for instance you take 3 Predators or you take 3 Vindicators, there are special rules that come into play, and we'll talk through some of those. So far, I've had the Codex about 6 hours, and as you can imagine, I've kind of skipped the fluff because I pretty much know the fluff. A lot of the stuff that you'll really love from the last Codex is still in there. You still have, for instance, so my Iron Hands rules are still there. They're slightly tweaked versus last time, so it gives you a 6 feel no pain, and both your characters and your vehicles have it will not die. So basically, if you're wounded, you got a 5 or a 6 chance at the end of a turn to get a wound back. That's pretty cool. Imperial Fists get to reroll failed bolter rolls if they're a 1. Salamanders, quite interestingly, they used to be able to reroll their armor saves, but now they get a 4 and up feel no pain against any flame attacks. And we were laughing about that because in this single stroke, suddenly people's they now are the army to face if you're against that guy that brings his 3 Helldrakes, yeah, because all of a sudden his 3 Helldrakes won't be quite as efficient as they used to be. I imagine actually some Helldrake players will probably go, "Ooh, that doesn't work," but that rule so fits in with the kind of fluff around the salamanders. It's great. Ultramarines are pretty much the same. I haven't really read everyone else, but let's start looking at things unit by unit and seeing what some of these changes are. Okay, cool. Okay, looking through the book a little here. So pretty much like I said, you can use these apocalypse kind of strike formations that have to be made up of a certain makeup of, for instance, this is a good example, the Battle Demi Company, where you need pretty much a captain, you need 3 tactical squads, an assault squad, and something like a Devastator, and maybe a Dreadnought. This kind of lists all the different ways you can use these kind of apocalypse type formations, and these, if you are following these rules and if using the game rules, this will confer some extra advantages, which is useful to know. Pretty much all your HQ choices are there, all the ones that you expect. Once again, you can have captains or chapter masters. You've got Pedro Cantor, you've got Marius Calgar. One of the few changes is that the Master of the Forge now is just a Tech Marine who you can pretty much upgrade to have a servo harness. Apart from that, it's pretty much the same. Troop selection is pretty much as before as well. Space Marines, the same cost, as indeed are Scouts. However, Scouts have had a bit of a boost. They now have basically, they previously, because they usually are initiates, they've usually had weapon skill and ballistic skill of 3, which means that the only figure in your army that can use a sniper rifle is actually one of the worst shots. But these have now been increased to 4 at no points cost. So now, more than ever, a Space Marine army is 4s across the board, pretty much. In terms of Terminators, no major changes. Your standard Terminator, like this guy, has now become 5 points cheaper to field, about 35 points a model, which is really good because I'm immediately going, I'm going to field more of these guys. Your Assault Terminators, though, are pretty much the same cost at 45 points each. Apart from that, no real major rule changes. Now, these 3 Dreadnoughts used to pretty much take 3 elite slots, but now you can basically put your Dreadnoughts together in a single formation and move them as a single formation that uses a single elite slot, which is pretty cool. And these are one of the few items under the new Codex that don't get a special rule if you do take 3. But all the same, it is pretty cool, and I think one of the advantages I see with using formations is the fact that you should be able to basically get a little bit more. It allows you guys not to be picked off quite so easy. Because, for instance, if I put this guy up front, and they've got 3, these 2 guys have got las cannons, and somebody says, well, actually I want to remove them. Every time he fires at the formation, because this is up front, he's got to remove this before you can hit that, before you can hit that. So I see there's a bit of a tactical potential to kind of like take another unit with you. For instance, this one, which is a little bit cheaper, to basically use as kind of an ablative armour. As long as you have a model in front, nothing can basically injure the last cannon dreadnoughts behind. It's a slightly expensive way of doing things, and obviously that assumes that you can see your enemy face on and they don't attack you from the flank. But yeah, it's a way of just kind of be a bit clever and basically help to increase the longevity of particular units. And I think when we look at Predators, you'll be able to see other ways that you can do this as well. Yep, and as discussed, you can have a squadron of 3 Predators now, which again is really, really useful. When you have a squadron of 3 Predators, though, the whole squadron gets the Monster Hunter and Tank Hunter special rules. And as I've said before, I'm kind of thinking, because I love these Predator Annihilators, but you put one on a board and someone says, pretty much goes, I want to take that off the board. And I'm thinking kind of using a formation here that costs about 140 points, and a basic Predator with is that the autocannon? Costs just 75, and the one with the last cannon costs 100 points. So a combination of these, put like this, typically the first shots would be taken at this one, and then it would have to go onto that one, and then finally onto that one. So it's a way tactically of saying, well, how can I prolong having firepower as long as possible before the one that they really want to get shot gets shot? This will work against a lot of enemies, but I think things like Tau, for instance, have this annoying way of kind of manoeuvring so that one is actually the one they can close in on. But yeah, the rules are having 3 and then having the special rule really brings something to what you can do. And I know that as more and more of these apocalypse formation rules gets filtered into the new codexes of other alien races, it will negate this. Right now, this feels like wow, because this is be a real boost for me as a Space Marine player. But I know that soon everyone will be having these special rules. But it's pretty cool. It does make you think a lot more about taking. I've previously, to be honest, only usually take one Predator, and it's either that one or that one, depending on whether I'm expecting to come against armour or against infantry. But this makes me think more of, actually, maybe I'll take a mixture or more models and see how things go. A formation of 3 Thunderfire cannons allows you to basically have a +1 ballistic skill, which is handy. If you have a formation of 3 Land Raiders, they basically ride each other's wake, and it allows you to move an extra 6 inches, again, which is a really quite neat rule. Now, there was a lot of rumours about Land Raiders and that they'd get new special rules that would allow you to take formations of them and they would be harder to destroy. And I have to say, there's no such rules. So you cannot take formations of Land Raiders, and there are no special rules. It's pretty much the rules that they've always been. So sorry to disappoint everyone there. And last, but by no means least, are the rules about the Vindicators. Now, I'm really pleased about this because I don't know why. I kind of picked up the original Vindicator many years ago, and I really enjoyed putting it together. And then I came across an old one at a game shop for some ridiculous, like about $10, and I went, yeah, and I adapted it and I upgraded it. And then suddenly I bumped into someone that was selling a metal one and went, hey, that's really cool. I know it's old, but it's kind of metal. So look, then it is actually a lovely model. And then I went, actually, there is no way I'd want to take a Vindicator and use all three of my heavy slots. Oh, it's just so annoying. So having a formation where I can take 3 Vindicators is pretty damn cool. Then it gets a little bit cooler, because if you've got 3 working Vindicators, instead of firing 3 large blasts, you can instead elect for one of them to fire a apocalyptic size strength 10 AP1 blast. As far as I know, the range is still 24 inches, so you don't want it to scatter back because it could be goodbye to your entire fleet. But I love that. I love that roll. I mean, it is going to, I think, mean, unfortunately, if I do take 3, maybe have to put them in reserves, because somebody, if you don't have the first turn, they are going to try their level best to take one of them out so that you can't use that roll, which is fair enough. But it kind of makes, suddenly just having 3 of these things kind of puts it on the footing of even footing against a Baneblade or a Imperial Knight for about the same points cost. So I really love that. I really love that. Really want to play that. Of course, I have to concede as well, if I was playing against somebody that was using that role, I'd probably be pretty miffed as well. But then again, as I said, tactically, if you take out one of the, if you concentrate on taking the gun off one of those tanks, you've stopped that special rule, and you're left with coping with 2 tanks which still have a nasty blast, but by no means anywhere near as nasty. But that, in a nutshell, is the Codex. It's one of those things where I feel a little bit that, yeah, it is an improvement on the last Codex. They haven't stripped away the stuff I was really worried. Maybe because I have been around in the wargaming for a long time. I am slightly disappointed it wasn't just handled as basically addendum to the pre-existing thing. Did it really warrant an entire new release? I'm not sure. So certain things have got a lot cheaper, and I really quite welcome that. It's not cheaper as in Games Workshop cheaper, but cheaper as in points costs, because Games Workshop never make things cheaper. It only goes in one direction. But yeah, it's an improvement. It brings it in line with the 7th edition. It also, I think, sets the scene for a lot of how future codexes are going to do, and judging by what's in this codex, pretty much every codex needs to be upgraded with kind of these apocalypse style formations. So we've probably got another year or 2 of fast-tracked codexes coming out. And unfortunately, it's probably going to mean as well that there is going to be a huge difference between the playability of an army that was released under the 6th edition and an army that has been released under the 7th edition, because the 6th edition will just lack these formations and some of the firepower, which is unfortunate. And I know if mine was one of the codexes to be done last, I would be really kind of peeved off with the game by the time it got to that. As ever, I'm interested in your thoughts. If you've got any thoughts on the matter, and whether you like the way that Warhammer is going or not, do leave a message and we'll reply to you. As we said, mixed feelings, because it's now making it scalable between skirmish games and apocalypse-sized games. But I don't know. If we wanted to play Apocalypse, we'd have collected Apocalypse stuff. It's certainly going to make private games between me and Cameron and anyone else we get into the War Bunker. It's not going to make a huge difference. But at tournaments, probably it means that you're going to come up against more Apocalypse-like formations and armies, with a lot, basically focusing on special rules and a lot of firepower, and negligible troops. Anyway, with that, that's the way the game's going. I don't know at this point if there's anything we can you can do about it. If you want to, I'll just turn it field. I know somebody was asking me questions about this last week, and the most obvious things is most tournament organisers, if they're worried about this stuff getting overpowered, it's easy to basically apply rules saying, there will be. One of the tournaments we had last year, for instance, said you can't field anything with a D weapon. Yeah, and that was just to introduce a level of balance. The upcoming tournament, 2 months, I think it's Fields of Blood. A Call to Arms, sorry. Call to Arms. There are special rules about you can't have 3 of the same unit, you can't spend more than 375 points on a single unit, and that's again to try and introduce a level of balance, because if you've got people fielding some of these Death Star data slates formations, and you've got people that just fielding heavy army, it plays unevenly against each other, really. At tournaments, you never know what you're going to get. But I know most tournament organisers are trying to introduce a level of rules which are there fundamentally to make sure that everyone arrives and they have a damn good game, and you don't come against people that are playing that army list. I mean, and I have to admit, looking through the new Space Marine Codex, I'm quite excited because all of a sudden I can see how I can make one of those army lists, three Vindicators, a squadron of 3 Vindicators, a squadron of 3 Predators. You can see how kind of you can just spam some weird stuff in there, and just kind of by putting the squadrons in a certain way, they're very difficult to take down certain units. It's easy to build. Very easy to build an army list that's quite powerful, but also for your opponent is absolutely no fun to play, and that's not good, because if your opponent doesn't feel like playing, you probably won't get them to play against you again anytime soon. Everyone at the end of every game, everyone wants to. Usually there has to be a winner, and there has to be a loser, but you want to go for a thing where everyone kind of can walk away and go, yeah, I enjoyed that game. If you have a game, and I have to name and shame my brother on this, but in the first Warhammer 40,000, you could actually design your own unit, and he designed a unit that basically his opponent with bolt guns couldn't hurt, or only on 6s, and although he had less units, he could basically wipe out the opposition better than the opposition could affect him, and it was just a very one-sided game. This is one of the reasons why Warhammer 40,000 has evolved, so that you can't make your own units, pay a point cards, and basically field an army of only monstrous units against somebody that might only have plus guns. It's all about having balance, making sure everyone's got the ability to do something. But the Codex, like I said, the Codex is a pretty good read. I've concentrated on the rules section. No surprises, and yet some things that are nice surprises. No horrid surprises, but some nice surprises. So go out. I would recommend any Space Marine player go out and get it. If you're unsure, I'd just say just keep playing. If you keep playing with what you've got, the Codex, your previous Codex, you're not really missing out on much, and you can upgrade at some point if you're thinking of doing a tournament. And indeed, if you're playing probably 1,000 points and under, or even just under 1,500. It's only when you've got armies about 1,500 that some of these rules will actually start to come into play. If you currently don't have 3 Vindicators or 3 Predators or 3 Dreadnoughts, you probably won't feel much benefit from these rules, to be honest, from the new rules. And even I know I have. You've just seen I've got most of that, and it's taken me years to collect. And sometimes I've collected things like 3 Vindicators that I can't quite explain why I own 3 Vindicators when I very rarely even feel one. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this. Let's have your comments on the new Codex, and indeed the way that you're feeling Warhammer 40,000 is going at the minute. And if you have enjoyed this and many other videos, do explore our back catalogue and subscribe. Catch you later. See ya.